Before we start this podcast, I want to definitely remind you of a sponsor for Fresh of the Word, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest. In the world of wrestling where there's hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads, don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. So if you'd like to discuss a possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or even Zubaz, then drop them a line at 20by20apparel.com. That's the number 20x, the number 20apparel.com. And also check out their enamel pin line. It's super cool.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what it goes. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. I tell I'm running out of breath, I tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, 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 goddamn it, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddamn it, we so damn fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh of the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier, and we got a great guest for you, a return guest to the podcast. We have Ming Chen. You might remember him on AMC's Comic Book Man, and he's also one of the co-founders of a Shared Universe PodcaStudio. And once again, he's going to be at Astronomicon here in Michigan. Yo, Ming, how's it going?
What's up, everybody? What's up, Kelly? K Fresh. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you all. It's an honor to be returning.
Hell yeah. I always run into you at various Comic-Cons. You're definitely, you hit the circuits, and you're going to be coming back to Astronomicon. You know, this is, the third year they're doing Astronomicon, third year you're going to be there. So, what's your thoughts about where Astronomicon's, gone thus far in this short period of time?
I go to a lot of cons, and I've been to a lot of first-year conventions in particular, and a lot of them don't survive that first year. They don't research the correct way to run it. Most of them, the biggest problem is they just waste too much money, and they're in this huge hole at the end of it, and they don't run it correctly. So for any con to get past that first year is a big feat. But to see a convention go into the third year, that's even bigger. But I think if you've been, you know why Astronomicon has endured, survived, and gets better every year. And if you haven't been there, you got to come on and check it out because it is definitely a unique and fun convention.
Yeah, it's cool because it's a smaller convention and everybody there is just kind of just like hanging out, whether it's the celebrities, the comic book creators, whoever's there, man, everybody's just kind of hanging out and shooting the shit with each other, Like, what are some of your memories of, the past couple years?
I think I remember the first year, I think on the Friday, the first day of the con, I was driving up to the Sterling Heights to the venue. My parents live in Ann Arbor, so I was driving from Ann Arbor to Sterling Heights, and I remember it started snowing, and it didn't let up, and I think it snowed like 15 inches that day.
Yo, there was a lot of damn snow.
Yeah, and it snowed, 15 inches right before the con started, and I'm going to the con. I'm like, man, this much snow. Like, who's gonna show up for this? Who's gonna drive through a blizzard on a Friday night to go to this con, and lo and behold, when I walked in, the place was packed. So I know the Twisted fans are very dedicated, and they don't let anything stop them. But I also saw the Astronomicon fans don't care about a little snow or a little blizzard, and it was like that all weekend. And I thought just see that kind of heart and dedication. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, we're used to that shit. Shit happens. Snow happens. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I love, I got to hang out. Some of my friends were there that first year. Brian Johnson came out with me from Comic Book Man. Brian O'Halloran from Clerks was there. Jason Mewes came out. And I think Mewes and O'Halloran are going to be out there again this year, celebrating, their recent stint in James Bond Reboot, Kevin's new movie. And as Kevin heads into Clerks 3 and Mallrats 2. So it's pretty cool to have the whole Kevin's Views universe represented in my home state of Michigan, no less.
Was there anybody that you met at the past couple Astronomicons that you never met before that it was like really cool to meet them?
Yeah, it was the late great Sid Haig definitely was amazing. Tiny Lister has a table next to me, and that guy is nuts, man. He's the guy you see in the movies. That's him.
Right.
just pretty cool. And he was he was busting my balls, which was pretty. He's easily twice as big as me, and he wouldn't let up, which was pretty amazing. So Kane Hodder for sure. He's a great guy, but he's also nuts, which is I think what you expect from him.
Right.
So if you're a fan of horror, definitely come out. If you're a fan of pop culture, definitely come out. And just if you're a fan of fun, definitely come out. Every year continues to top the year before.
Is there anybody that's going to be at Astronomicon next month that you're excited to see or you never met before?
I love that Kevin Eastman is coming out. I'm a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. I think his story is amazing, especially if you've watched The Toys That Made Us on Netflix. They featured this past season the rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles empire. I've met him before, though. He's a Comic Book Man alumni. He was featured on the show in one episode, and which he brought the very first Turtles drawing that he did. But even though I've met him before, I'm excited to see him in Michigan, and kind of my home state. He's coming to my neighborhood, and it'll be cool to see him there. And I anticipate he's going to have a very long line.
Right. I would assume so. What you been up to these days? What sort of projects have you been working on?
Oh man, so my life revolves on two things. Going to Comic-Cons and podcasting, basically. So a lot of people ask me, Comic Book Man, what's the best thing that's happened since you were featured on a TV show about comics and pop culture? And I was like, oh man, I get invited to all these cool Comic-Cons now. I love to travel. Obviously, I love going to Comic-Cons. I love meeting people who love the same things that I do. I love talking about Star Wars and Game of Thrones and The Mandalorian and things like that with fellow fans. So cons are the perfect environment for me. So I went to, I think I hit like 30 cons last year. So it's and it never got tiring. So that was cool. And then me and Mike Zapsik from Comic Book Man, we opened up a podcast studio here in Jersey, and that's been taking up the other half of my time. It's if you watch Comic Book Man, it's pretty cool. You see us talking around a table, the microphones. I thought it was cool that we were featuring podcasting on the TV show, and we decided to expand on that and open up a business and help other people launch podcasts as well. And you know how it is. You know how fun this is.
Yeah.
And I want to show people how much fun this is. I want to pass on this love of podcasting to other people. And so far so good. It's been going pretty well.
How's it? Yeah, definitely talked to you about that last year. And how has a shared universe grown in the past year?
So it's growing. I think when we started, we were like, well, who's gonna use a service like this? Who's gonna pay who's going to pay to rent a podcast studio by the hour to record the podcast? So we thought it was going to be all geeks like me and Mike. We thought it was going to be people reviewing movies, complaining about bad movies, talking about good movies, just talking about pop culture in general. So we kind of focused our marketing advertising toward the geeks. I was like, hey, grab your friends, come in, talk pop culture. We had always thought that one thing a geek always has is their opinion.
Right.
Guys like me and you, guys like nerds, we love expressing our opinions. And rather than getting into an argument with your friend where that conversation gets lost to the ether, come to a shared universe and we'll record it and get it out to the world. Anyone can listen to your conversation about pop culture. So we really kind of catered toward that. But we started realizing, I was like, well, this is for everybody. This is for people with small businesses that want to promote their businesses. This is for people who want to inspire other people through the spoken word. We quickly realized that podcasting is for everybody on any topic and any subject. So we stopped kind of marketing just toward geeks, and we started spreading out to everybody else. And it's been pretty awesome. I've learned so many cool things from podcasters that just come in. I've met so many cool people that I didn't expect to meet, and it's been just a lot of fun.
Yeah, the popularity of podcasts just continues to grow, and it's become more of a ubiquitous thing in just pop culture and just everything in general. What are some of the things that you feel like has progressed in a good way for podcast, but then what are some things that you feel like should be better in just the podcast industry?
I think it's become more accessible over the last, 5 to 10 years. The equipment costs have come down. The technology has become more user friendly, and I think just the fact that the genre of podcasting has been promoted in the media, in pop culture, and culture has played a big part in it. I think, actually starting with us at Comic Book Man, you see us podcasting on the TV show. We were the first TV show to feature podcasting in any major media format. Prior to that, you never saw anyone podcasting in a movie or a TV show or actually in print ads or anything. So I thought it was pretty cool to be at the forefront of that. But I think, just the fact that more people are listening, I think, as little as 4 or 5 years ago, if you went and talked to 10 people on the street, I think 7 to 8 of them would be like, podcast, what's that? What's a podcast? And you'd have to explain it to them. I think now that number is closer to, I think probably 9 out of 10 people now know what a podcast is. And, maybe 3 out of those 10 have actually started one themselves. So I just think the growth has been pretty exponential and has been pretty phenomenal since this all started. And I think just a lot of people have been more encouraging of the genre. Guys like me, and there's another studio in Detroit called Podcast Detroit. Guys like us, we're like, hey, this is fun. This is easy. This is great. Get your message out there. We're really trying to encourage people to start shows. We think that podcast is for everybody.
When you're talking with people that want to start their their own podcasts, what sort of things do you talk about with them in regards to not only just doing the show and what the topic is, but what's your thoughts about marketing a podcast?
So I think the biggest question we get once people decide they want to start is they're like, well, how do I get an audience? How do I grow my audience? How do I get people to listen? And I'm like, man, in this day and age, we have one of the most powerful marketing tools out there, and it just happens to be free as well, and that's social media. So, I tell these people, starting a podcast is like starting a small business. You don't just open up a small business and then you don't just sit there and like, all right, I'm open, everybody come now. You got to advertise it. You got to tell people about it. You got to spend every waking hour telling people that you're there and what you do and why you're awesome. And, if you have competition, you got to tell people why you're better than the other guy. But you really have to tell people that you're there and convince people to come out. And same way with starting a podcast, you have to market yourself. You have to spend time telling people why they should listen to your show. And I think with Gues, the reach of social media, the way that you can embed your episodes where people can listen to them right directly in Facebook, or hit a play button in Instagram, or you can throw up an Insta story with a clip of your episode, or attach it to Twitter. And Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, that's all free to post on. So I think a lot of people should be spending a lot of time on social media. They should be spending time in the real world too, telling people that you have a show. And you got to scream it from the rafters, scream it from the sky that you have a podcast and you should listen to it, because you spend a lot of time on it and it's awesome. And you really need to scream until you just can't scream anymore that you have a show and everyone should listen.
With so many avenues about where you can place your podcasts and where you can stream it from, where you can distribute it to, what sort of tips do you give people in regards to when they're telling people about their podcast, where to point them to?
In the past, iTunes was a big, huge one. That's where every podcast gets listed. That's where most people listen to podcasts. But, very recently in the last 2 years, Spotify has become a major player in the podcast game. So much so they just bought a couple of networks for like $200 million, which when I heard that, I was like, whoa, these guys, this is becoming a major media format.
Yeah.
There are companies with money investing in this genre. And for guys like me starting a podcast business, that's good. For me as a podcast content creator, this is very good. And you can listen to podcasts on so many different formats. I try to list all of them just to catch whatever people might be listening to. But yeah, I definitely, I'm like, hey, if you have an iPhone, you have the podcast app on your phone. It comes on free on every phone. Definitely subscribe or search for your favorite podcast on there. Spotify has been great, though, man. Spotify has been really great for encouraging podcasting. For their interface is very easy to use. Yeah. And I think I don't know anyone who doesn't use Spotify, either the free or paid version right now. So that's pretty cool. If you're on an Android phone, Google Play is a great way to find podcasts. And then there are separate apps like Stitcher, like a lot of podcasts are on the iHeartRadio app right now. TuneIn, the TuneIn app lists a lot of podcasts as well. And then there are other third-party apps like Castbox is a great way. So there, it shouldn't be hard to find your favorite podcast.
Right. I was just listening. There's this one podcast I was listening to. It's a podcast about podcasting. I forget the name of it. But he was saying that when, pointing people to different, when offering certain, choices to where they can listen to, the popular ones that know what podcasts are, or, it could be the Apple Podcast or Spotify, whatever. But it's also important to have it at a place like iHeartRadio, because your regular person who might not know about podcasts or streaming platforms, they might know iHeartRadio just from the regular mainstream radio.
Like, I can I can just search the Ming and Mike show, or the other one me and Mike do called I Sell Comics, and that'll pop up on iHeartRadio. Like, absolutely, you can go on there. Make sure you subscribe and rate it. Right. But, absolutely, you can pull it up on there. And I think that's cool. That's accessible pretty much anywhere at this point.
Yeah, when you can listen to it on those, it legitimizes it a little bit more to your very middle of the road regular.
Yeah, your average user, exactly.
Yeah, your average user. When before you'd just have all these podcast apps and stuff like that, and they're cool and all, but there's some people out there that might not understand that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think. As it grows, it'll be, it's mainstream now. It's going to become even more so in the next 2 to 4 years, which is really cool.
For, people who are starting their podcasts, what other advice would you give them in regards to experimenting with what they're doing and
keeping an open mind about changes to make about the focus of what their podcast is?
I just say first, just dive in. I don't do it by myself. I usually grab a co-host. I need someone to make fun of, which is usually Mike Zapsik. So
Right.
that works out good. But usually the first advice I give is like, all right, you're going to start a podcast. Great, you've picked a general topic or a specific topic that you want to podcast about. Great. Make sure you're going to be dedicated to this. Meaning, if you've decided to release once a week, which is the usual podcast schedule, make sure you dedicate yourself to that. Make sure you record an episode once a week. Make sure you release that episode once a week. That's the best way you're going to grow a listening audience. And my analogy for that is, imagine in like The Mandalorian or Game of Thrones. Those came out once a week. Imagine you saw episode 1, and then next week you're expecting episode 2, and they're Disney Plus or HBO was like, we didn't feel like putting up the episode this week. Maybe it'll come out next week. And without that consistent schedule, you're not going to gain an audience. So that's I think first and foremost. I'm like, listen, you're going to start. Make sure you're dedicated to this. If you or your co-host can't carve out 1 hour a week to record your episode, then maybe you need to rethink why you're doing this. Or it doesn't have to be once a week. Maybe I know schedules are busy. Maybe you can do it once every other week. Maybe you can do it once a month. But tell people that you're going to release. That's your schedule, and then do it. So that's the one thing. I try to ask podcasts like, hey, before you record an episode, kind of game plan your episode. Make a list of what you want to talk about. Just write it down. It doesn't have to be super detailed. It doesn't have to be so detailed that you're reading off a piece of paper. But just so you have in front of you what you wanted to talk about that week, you won't forget anything, and you can go from topic to topic, and you'll have a good flow. So there won't be any gaps in the conversation, and you'll have your whole show right in front of you. And I try to get people just to prepare a little bit. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be tough, but I think it definitely helps the episode. And then number 3, you know what? You're doing this. Have fun. If this becomes work, if you're arguing with a co-host, or if there's some kind of drama, I don't know. These are all things that I've seen before. If you're not having fun doing this, or anything in life for that matter, then you should probably stop doing it.
During all the years that you've been podcasting, how do you feel like your views about what you're doing has, just what you want out of a podcast, how do you feel like that's progressed over the years?
I think, when I started 10 years ago, and it was Kevin Smith that got all of us into it. He had finally found a audio format where he could, dictate the direction of his show. He could talk for as long as he wanted to, and he could drop the F-bomb as many times as he wanted. He could curse. And that was a perfect format for him. And so when I started listening to him, once he started recording and released a show, it got very popular very quick for 2 reasons. One, he's a very good storyteller, so his storytelling abilities are perfect for podcasting. And number 2, he was Kevin Smith, so he had a kind of a built-in audience. I felt he was famous already, and at the time, when people were like, "Oh, Kevin Smith has a podcast," I gotta listen to this because he's a very good storyteller. So at that time, I thought podcasting was just for famous people, for people who already had an audience, people who were already in the entertainment industry making it big already. So it wasn't until a couple of years later when he turned to me and was like, "Hey, I want you to start a podcast." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I can't start a podcast. I didn't go to broadcast school. I didn't go to radio school. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to talk about." And I was a guy who sat on the computer uploading his podcast. I was a technology guy. I sat behind a computer. I would have been perfectly happy doing that for the rest of my life. Like, what do you want me to start a podcast? And at the time, he was starting a whole network, and he needed other shows that weren't just his shows. So he was recruiting all of his friends and some of the people who worked for him. And he slowly convinced me. He was like, "Dude, just talk about what you love, and that's a podcast." And I'm like, "Oh, I can have a podcast on comics and Star Wars, and maybe talk about food. Those are the 3 things I love the most in life." He's like, "That's a podcast." I'm like, really? It's like, wow. He's like, just give it a shot. That's, see me and talk for about 45 minutes to an hour on Star Wars and comics and food. And, let's see how it goes. So I grabbed a co-host, which is Mike Zapsik, and we recorded. And it went really, really well. And we had so much fun. And I was like, hey, Mike, man, listen back to that first episode. I was like, Mike, that was actually pretty good. I don't want to brag or anything, but we sounded like a real show. Like, why did that sound so good? We don't have any training. He's like, well, we were talking about things that we really love. And when you talk about something that you're passionate about, you go on for hours about why that topic, because you know so much about it. And I was like, wow, that's cool. And, slowly I realized, like, anybody could do this. This is really cool. Anybody who loves something and can talk about it can start a podcast. And so I've been trying to spread that message to everybody else for sure. So that this format's for everybody, listening, but especially creating as well.
How do you feel like the podcast, avenue has, helped with, people of various, marginalized communities, whether it's people of color, whether it's sexuality, gender, whatever, even if it's like their...
Oh man, I mean, I think it's definitely giving them a voice. That prior to that, if you wanted to get a message out, I guess you could write a blog post, I guess, or you could maybe put up a tweet, 140 character tweet at the time. Now that expanded, maybe put up a Facebook post. I guess maybe you could have shot a YouTube video, prior to that. The YouTube videos, you need, there's editing involved. It's a lot harder. I think by, expressing yourself, whether you're marginalized or you're just trying to get a voice out there, through the vocal format is so powerful. It's definitely more powerful than words on a page. It's definitely more powerful than, limited character tweet. And, even prior to all that, I guess you want to get your word out. You had to get on the news or something, maybe, or write a newspaper article, and it was just a lot harder to get any message out. Whereas now, if you want to get something out, if you're feeling oppressed or something happened to you that day, you can record an episode about it, or you can record episodes about your experiences, or interview people that have gone through the same things as you did, and get that out to the world. And I love the podcast format. For the most part, you can fire up the mics, you can record an episode, and you can have it out to the world literally 10 minutes after you wrap. And I think that's very powerful for sure.
And sort of like the marketing of a podcast, how important do you feel it is for the host or the hosts? How important do you feel like it is for them to try to sort of mold their own voice or persona to, something that can stand out through the sea of podcasts that are out there?
I think just by a person starting a podcast, I think they stand out already. Meaning that if I start a show, it's my voice. Nobody has my voice. Nobody has my opinions. Nobody has my mindset. Nobody, we're unique already. So that's a big check mark. That's a big that's big already. But and my analogy for that is, just by us being unique individuals, we stand out already. And usually for the most part, it's good taking feedback. And I was like, hey, people loved it when we did this segment. Maybe we should do more of that. That's cool. But I think everyone's got a very unique voice and a very unique opinion. So I think we stand out already. And my analogy for that is, you and I could go to a concert in Detroit, like at the Fox Theater or something, and then we could come back and podcast about it. And when we podcast about it, we will probably have two completely different stories about that experience we had at the concert.
Right.
Even though we were at the same venue at the same time, probably standing 3 feet away from each other, we would probably have different stories about what happened. Maybe some guy spilled a beer on me, and almost got into a fight. Maybe maybe you got dragged there. You didn't like the band that was playing, and then they were awesome, and you're like, oh, these guys are really good. I think just by you being unique individuals, we had two different stories about our experiences there, and I think that's pretty awesome. I think since we're unique already, I think that makes us stand out. I know there are a lot of podcasts out there, and I know it's like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast about movies. Probably 10 million podcasts out there about movies, but none of those podcasts will be you expressing your feelings and opinions on movies, and that'll make you stand out for sure. It's going to be tough, though. It's going to be tough if you're starting a show and you're expecting to get 10 million listeners right away, probably not going to happen unless you're Kevin Smith or Joe Rogan or, if you're famous already. So you got to work at it like anything else. It's going to be a long process. And, even if you start out, you're getting 3 or 4 people, keep going. That number will grow. And, if you want to take some feedback and, maybe expand some of your segments, somebody suggests a segment that you should do, absolutely take that. But, I think, if you're scared to start because there's so many out there, I think that holds a lot of people up. I think that's not a good reason to not start. I think, your voice is your voice. Nobody has that voice. And, you're unique already. Your show is unique already. And, I think that you shouldn't let that hold you back.
Yeah, it's funny, like with this podcast, Fresh is the Word, through, it's in like the 190s in regards to episodes, and it's gone through so many like changes almost, and it always like sort of reflected like what I was really interested in the time, but and it's funny like how it's almost like you step outside your comfort zone a little bit,
yes,
and it leads you down this whole other route. When I first started, I was just like, I just want to talk about wrestling and music and blah, blah, blah. Now I have guests that are, talk about sex work or comic book artists.
Yeah,
I like having a lot of fun.
That had you not talked to them, you wouldn't know. One, you're learning about what they do, but you're spreading that out to your audience. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's where it's kind of grown. Where it's just like I want to have like a diverse thing of like a diverse cast of voices. I want to have a lot of, and so I've learned all these different things, but I feel like I have always done it in a way where it's just like anybody that listens to this can enjoy this or get something out of it. It's not super niche. But then, it got to a point also, I just started, what I did was I separated my music interviews and from now on into their own podcasts because.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
We started a podcast like, hey, I think I want to start another one and separate and maybe do a different subject. You can. There's no one stopping. You can have 2 shows. 5 shows, 100 shows.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I realized that like the music ones seemed a little different than everything else, and then so I started breaking records, and then the Detroit music ones seemed even different than that, So I just started Renaissance Soul. So right now, it's much more organized. And, I'm a lot more happy about it. And it also sort of reinvigorated like podcasting for me.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. And, if you listen to either of those 3 podcasts, I'm sure it's reflected your passion for Detroit music, for wrestling. You can tell that you look forward to recording every episode. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I always liked with Fresh is the Word, I always just think of it as like an ongoing experiment, and it's like if I want to learn about something, I can reach out to somebody that's got got me like interested in that thing.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about it. Like right now I love talking about like gender identity and stuff like that, sex work. I like, and how that kind of, and it's still under the lens of pop culture though. I always like to use pop culture to talk about these things.
Right.
So people could have something to latch onto.
Right.
And like,
Absolutely.
I always like finding these topics that I'm really into, and then just, talking with them. And a lot of times I hear about these people through other podcasts.
Yeah, and it's cool. So, and I think either grabbing guests from other podcasts or grabbing other podcasters as guests, that helps you grow your audience, because you promote their show, they promote your show to their audience, and you never know where it'll go from there. And I think that's the topics you're hitting are cool. I don't know much about sex work. I'm not a sex worker, but I love hearing the stories about how people get into it. The pitfalls they befall, why they do it, if they love it, why they love it, things like that. I think it's pretty cool.
And it's funny some of the things that these people that you might think are so different actually have in common. Like the same laws that are, like, for instance, the same laws that are holding back sex workers are also affecting people in the LGBTQ community, who are also affecting working mothers. And there's all these things that they have in common that they're actually fighting against. So it's just like really interesting to sort of talk about those things.
Yeah, it's who knows? Podcasting brings people together, and I think it has. I think that's a great thing.
So, what do you have what do you hope to be doing in the future? What how do you want to expand this this podcast business of yours?
You just said it. So we currently have one studio now in New Jersey. We've just opened up a pop-up studio by the ocean, actually, about 20 minutes south, in a city called Asbury Park.
Okay.
And if you know Asbury Park, it's Springsteen country. That's where Springsteen got his start.
Yeah.
As well as a
Bam
number of
Bam
other
Bigelow.
musicians. We just had the very unique opportunity to open up a pop-up podcast studio down there, and the response to that has been even bigger than I thought it would be, which is cool. Since it's a beachfront location, a lot of people go down there. And I was hanging out there this weekend. People have been stopping, and they're like, "Well, what is this podcast studio? Can I record a podcast here?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I've been educating people on the whole podcast studio concept. So this is going to be pretty big for us. But beyond that, I would love to have a shared podcast studio in every major city, first in America, and then hopefully the world. So, we started where I live in Red Bank, New Jersey. And it's a small community, but I want to see if this will work in Atlanta or Nashville or Los Angeles or Chicago or Seattle, bigger cities. And I want to help people launch shows. I want to help people have fun. I want to help people get together with their friends once a week to talk about something. I want to help people get their voices out there. And slowly but surely, I think we're moving toward that.
Yeah, like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, you were you go to a lot of pop culture conventions. Like when you're traveling like that, what's sort of the feel of podcasting in those sort of communities? Whether it's the people.
This is that going to the cons is actually the why the studio started. Guys, me and Mike Sapsik would go to a con, and inevitably, almost every city we went to, someone would come up to us like, "Hey, I love the TV show; it's great, but I really love the podcast. Your podcast is really good. I listen every week." When we're like, "Wow, that's great, thank you." Like, hey, how do we start our own podcast? We want to have as much fun as you guys do. How do I start it? And we would give them, maybe a 10 to 15 minute lesson on what gear to buy and where to upload it and how to start. And that was fine and all, but in the back of our minds, we're like, man, what if we had a studio where we could teach classes, like a legit class,
Yeah.
where we could sit them down for 2 hours and teach them the basics, teach them how to plan a show, teach them about the gear, teach them about, pass on our 10 years of experience to them, and then record an episode, where by the time they left, they would have an episode up on iTunes already. I was like, what a great class that would be. And I was all inspired by people asking us at Comic-Cons. And finally, a couple years later, we actually did it. We opened up the studio. And but that was all inspired by going to Comic-Cons and being asked so many times, like, how can I start a podcast?
You brought up something that I've noticed with certain people is that, like, yeah, people will say, "Yo, I love the TV show, but the podcast is awesome. I love that." For creatives, for people, whether they're famous, mid-level, whatever, what do you think the creative outlet for, creatives are, that also do other things, like are a part of a scripted TV show and whatever? Like, how, what's the freedom that you feel like anybody can get out of doing a podcast?
Oh man, it's complete freedom. So if you look at some of these actors who started podcasts, I think I'm going to point out Michael Rosenbaum first and foremost. He played Lex Luthor on the TV show Smallville. He's got a podcast called Inside of You, and you can tell as he records every episode, he's like, listen, in my professional life, I read words off of a page. I perform something that somebody else has written. I do things that a director tells me to do. I'm at the mercy of the written word and a director and, a TV show plot. Or, and that the same goes for most actors, almost, well, every actor, really.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a movie or TV show or a play or whatever, you're doing something that somebody else wrote. And so he's like, well, I want to start a podcast where I can control every aspect of my show. I book my own guests. I talk about what I want to talk about. I release it when I want to release it. It's complete freedom. And I first started noticing that when Kevin started. Even though Kevin writes his own stuff and he is a director, he was still at the mercy of the movie studios for the most part, telling them, like, oh, you can't do this. Audience might not react to this thing, this page right here or this dialogue. You have to trim this down to 90 minutes or whatever. He still was at the mercy of a movie studio. So I noticed that when he started podcasting, I could tell that. I was like, whoa, man, he could do. He's like, Kevin's a guy who wants to do whatever he wants, and he doesn't want anyone to stop him. And that's pretty much the podcast genre in the nutshell. And he even told me, he was like, hey, it's cool when somebody tells me they love the movies or they love comic book men, but if someone comes to me and they're like, whoa, I really love the podcast, that's when he's really happy. And so, if you're creative at any level, this gives you an outlet to dictate your own format, your own show, your own questions. You have complete freedom over what direction to take. It's all you.
Right.
It's all you, and as such, if people listen to it, that's awesome. This is something that came out of your head and your voice, and there was no one, there was no director or writer that told you what to say or how to perform or what direction to move in. And I think, for a creative person who wants to do what comes in their head, wants to get that out, I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, like, how actors will almost do like the passion project, like the small like indie film that they really like, they like the script and whatnot. They'll do one of those, but then they'll do the big studio one, one for them, one for me, one for them, one for me, that thing. I feel like, podcasts can give that sort of creative, like, satisfaction for those types of people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt. And, if you look, a lot of actors, a lot of creative people that, out in the media have started their own podcasts, and definitely give them a listen, because, they're really good. They're amazing. Big shout out to Michael Rosenbaum though. His podcast is awesome.
Kind of across the board, what are some podcasts that you would recommend for people that might not, be aware of?
So you want to start listening to podcasts. What are you into? because there's a podcast about everything.
Right.
Yeah, I just learned there's like 20 podcasts about yarn dyeing. Dyeing yarn different colors. I'm like, what? And apparently, yarn dyeing is very popular. It's a very lucrative industry. It's big. There's a yarn dyeing convention every year in Indianapolis where people make a bunch of money selling, colored yarn. It's a whole thing, and people are very, very much in love with it. This is something that people are passionate about. So usually, I was like, well, what are you into? Are you into pop culture? Are you into comics? Are you into movies? Are you into true crime? Do you want to hear interviews of famous people? There's something. Are you into sports? That's pretty cool. And then the ones that are, I think, universally loved. I was like, hey, go on to iTunes, check out the top 10.
Yeah.
There's a reason that they're up in the top 10 because they're really good. They appeal to a mass audience. Start at one of those. Start at This American Life, which most people love. A lot of people got sucked in with Serial or a True Crime one. That's a great one. If you love sports, ESPN has a 30 for 30 podcast, which is great. If you love stories and adventure, there's like Last Podcast on the Left or Critical Role or Welcome to Night Vale. I mean, God, there's so many great podcasts out there. And I'll give out suggestions, but I think first and foremost, you're going to listen because people are talking about something that you love already, and that's probably where you should go first.
What's something that you listen to that people, it might be out in left field for you? It might be something that people might not even know that you like.
Oh man, I think I'm into everything, so I don't think there would be anything. I'm trying to think. There's a I don't know the name of the podcast. I just stumbled on it. It's two women who live in Vegas, and they just go out and party, and they get down, and they're very frank about their misadventures. And I got so into the show I don't even know. I can't even remember the name of the show now. But it was something that came sort of left field. But a friend of mine suggested I listen to it because they told a really wacky sex story about someone who is famous and somebody that I know. They didn't reveal the name, but by listening to the story, I was like, oh man, that's that guy. And that's why I started listening to it. And I wish I remember the name right now, but it'll come to me, I'm sure. But that's something that, I don't think I would have pulled up intentionally, perhaps. So, that's cool. I think everything else I listen to is pretty mainstream. I love This American Life. I love a podcast about How I Built This, which, where they go and say they talk to the guy who invented Airbnb or the two guys who started Instagram. And they're like, well, how did you go from a college student to making billions of dollars inventing Instagram? And that podcast is very inspirational because I feel like I'm kind of embarking on that same journey.
Right. A couple podcasts that I listen to that, I don't got kids, I'm not a parent or whatever, but there's a podcast called The Double Shift, and they just finished their, she just finished her second season. So it's created by Catherine Goldstein, who I had on my podcast because I really liked her podcast, and it's about modern new types of working mothers. So, it's a very serious podcast, and each episode kind of went to, talked about these types of mothers that, people don't think about in their situation. And then another podcast that I listen to is also another podcast about mothers, and it's called One Bad Mother. And it's a really frank and funny podcast with these two women, and one of them, Teresa Thorne, I've had I have an upcoming episode on of my podcast with her. So it's these podcasts about mothers that I really enjoy.
Probably would have never delved into had it not been for these episodes. I'm going to check those out for sure.
Yeah. So I like trying to find little things that I'm interested in, and but at the same time, might be a little different than what I'm used to. And that's the cool thing about podcasts.
Yeah, it really is. And now with the studio and just going on the world, I'm meeting a lot of people who have podcasts. So immediately I'm like, hey, what's your podcast called? I'll subscribe to them right on the spot. Just to show them support, of course. We're fellow podcasters. Support each other. But you never know. It might be an amazing show that you didn't know about before you met that person. So I think that's cool that you can just go out in the real world and meet creators out on the street. I think that's amazing.
All right, cool, Ming. It's been great talking with you.
You too, man. Thank you. That was great. I assume I'll be seeing you at the convention.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely see you at
Fantastic.
Astronomicon. Where can people go online to get more information about what you're up to in a shared universe?
I myself am, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Ming Chen 37, MINGCHEN 37, and our podcast studio is called A Shared Universe. That can be found at ashareduniverse.com or at A Shared Universe on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So I'm not very hard to find. Follow, comment. If you're ever in Jersey, maybe you're visiting the comic book shop. We're only 10 minutes away from there, so go visit the shop and then come down and podcast about it. Get your experiences on record, and I'll probably be there with you. I'll podcast with you for sure.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll see you next month at Astronomicon.
Fantastic. Thank you, K Fresh. Appreciate it.
Hey, yo, thank you for listening to this episode of Fresh is the Word, hosted and produced by myself, Kelly K Fresh Frazier, empowered by Anchor at anchor.fm/Fresh is the Word. Intro theme music by Foulmouth, Shimmy Bango, and Knox Money. Fresh is the Word is available on all major streaming platforms. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. If you want to support Fresh is the Word, please consider pledging via Patreon at patreon.com/Fresh is the Word. Follow Fresh is the Word on social media on Twitter at Fresh is the Pod, on Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and join the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Fresh is the Word. For more information about Fresh is the Word and our other podcasts, Breaking Records and Renaissance Soul, and a collection of pop culture articles and reviews, please visit freshasthepodcast.com. Thank you for listening and your support. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.